Punishment. We spend so much of our lives chasing control. We make lists, set goals, and push ourselves harder, believing that if we can just manage every detail, everything will fall into place. But what usually happens? The plans shift, punishment. People disappoint us, the unexpected knocks us off balance, and suddenly we're left with this weight that feels impossible to carry. That's because life was never meant to be lived on our strength alone. The moment you decide to put God first, the game changes. It doesn't mean the problems disappear, but it does mean you stop living as if everything depends solely on you. When God is at the center, the chaos loses its power. Punishment. Think about how much of your stress comes from trying to predict outcomes, fix situations, or get others to act the way you want. That pressure eats away at your peace. But when you put God first, you release the illusion of control and step into alignment with something greater. Suddenly, you don't have to know every answer. You just have to trust the next step. That shift alone takes you from anxiety to clarity, punishment, from fear to calm. Putting God first also changes how you see setbacks. Most people see failure as the end of the road. They think, if I didn't succeed here, I must be done. But when you've placed God at the top of your priorities, failure is no longer final. It's just part of the process. You begin to understand that not everything falling apart means you've lost. Punishment. Sometimes it means you're being redirected, refined, or even protected from something you can't see yet. That perspective takes away the sting of disappointment and replaces it with a quiet confidence that no matter what happens, punishment, you're being guided. And let's talk about peace, because that's the currency everyone is chasing. People think peace comes with money, relationships, or recognition, but how many wealthy, admired people still feel restless inside? Punishment. Real peace doesn't come from things you can lose. It comes from putting God at the core of who you are. When you do that, circumstances stop being your master. You can go through storms without letting the storm get inside of you. Punishment. You can handle delays without being consumed by impatience. You can even face criticism without losing your sense of worth. That's the power of alignment. It steadies you when everything else is shaking. Punishment. Putting God first also reshapes your decisions. Instead of being driven by fear of missing out, fear of rejection, or fear of failure, your choices start to flow from purpose. You no longer ask, punishment, what will make me look successful? But instead, what aligns with what I'm called to do? That's how you avoid the trap of living for applause and start living for meaning. And that shift affects every part of your life, your work, your relationships, your goals, even how you spend your time. The truth is, we all put something first. For some, it's money. For others, it's status, approval, punishment, or even control itself. But every time we put something temporary at the center, we end up empty. When God is first, everything else finds its proper place. You gain clarity about what matters, strength for what's heavy, punishment and peace in what's uncertain. So if you're tired of feeling scattered, restless, or weighed down, stop trying to build life on your own foundation. Start by shifting the order. Put God first. Because when you do, punishment. It doesn't just change how you live. It changes how you see, how you endure, and ultimately how you rise. Life has a way of feeling heavier than it should. We wake up with lists in our heads, responsibilities waiting, punishment. And this constant pressure that whispers, you better not mess this up. Most of us live with the belief that if we can just manage everything, our jobs, our relationships, our finances, our future, then life will finally fall into place. So we plan, we push, we try to hold every piece together with our own strength. But here's the truth, no matter how hard we try, we don't have control over every outcome. Punishment. And it's that fight for control more than the circumstances themselves that makes life feel so heavy. Think about it. How much of your stress really comes from what's happening and how much comes from you trying to predict, manage, punishment, or fix things that are outside your reach? We lose sleep replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios, and planning for things that may never even happen. We exhaust ourselves carrying weight that was never ours to carry in the first place. That's why life feels overwhelming, not always because of the challenges, but because of how tightly we're trying to grip them. Punishment. When you decide to put God first, that weight begins to shift. It's not that the responsibilities vanish. You still have to show up, make decisions, and do the work. But the difference is you're no longer carrying it all alone. Punishment. You stop living as though the entire universe rests on your shoulders, and instead you begin to trust that there's a greater hand guiding you. That trust doesn't just lighten your load. It changes your perspective. Punishment. Putting God first lifts the burden because it realigns your focus. Instead of obsessing over what you can't control, you begin to focus on what you can, your attitude, your effort, your choices in the moment. And you stop being paralyzed by what if and start moving in the confidence of what is. And in that shift, the stress begins to lose its grip. It's a little like driving in a storm. When you're gripping the wheel in panic, Punishment. Staring at the rain pounding against the windshield, your whole body tenses up. But if you focus on the road right in front of you, trust your headlights, and take it 1 mile at a time, the storm doesn't feel quite as impossible to drive through. Life works the same way. When you put God first, you're no longer staring into the chaos with fear. You're trusting that each step you take has a purpose, even when the storm is raging. Another reason life feels so heavy is that we confuse responsibility with control. You are responsible for your effort, your character, and your choices. But you are not responsible for controlling outcomes, punishment, people's reactions, or every twist of life's journey. When you put God first, you learn to let go of that false responsibility. You begin to understand that your role is to sow, but the results don't rest entirely in your hands. Punishment, that's a freeing realization because it allows you to give your best without being crushed by what you can't change. And here's the part that often surprises people: punishment. Putting God first doesn't just lighten the weight, it brings peace in places you never expected. Suddenly, you can face uncertainty without panic. You can accept delays without losing hope. Punishment. You can even walk through disappointment without feeling destroyed. Why? Because your sense of stability isn't tied to how perfectly life goes according to your plan. It's anchored in the belief that there's a higher plan at work. Punishment. Some of the most exhausted people you'll ever meet are those trying to control everything and everyone around them. And some of the most peaceful people you'll ever meet are those who've released that need for control and learned to trust something greater. The difference isn't in the size of their problems. It's in the posture of their hearts. Punishment. So if life feels heavy right now, maybe it's not because you're failing. Maybe it's because you're trying to carry what you were never meant to carry. Maybe it's because you've put the weight of outcomes, timing, and control on yourself instead of placing it in God's hands. Putting God first doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop working hard or making wise choices. What it means is that you shift the order. You let God be the foundation, and from there you build. And when that order is right, the burden lightens. You no longer live with clenched fists and a racing mind. You live with open hands, steady steps, punishment, and a calm assurance that even when you don't have control, you are not lost. That's the freedom of putting God first. It's not the absence of problems, it's the presence of peace. We all love plans. Plans give us a sense of control. They make us feel like if we just map it all out, step by step, life will follow the script we wrote in our heads. And for a while, sometimes it works. Things line up, the pieces fit, and it feels like we're in charge. But then life happens. A door closes we thought would stay open. A relationship shifts we thought was steady. An opportunity disappears we thought was guaranteed. Suddenly, punishment. The plan we leaned on doesn't make sense anymore. Logic says, this isn't working. Our minds spiral, what do I do now? What if I've failed? What if I can't recover? That's where so many of us stay trapped in confusion because our human reasoning has reached its limit. But here's the truth: clarity doesn't always come from logic. Clarity often comes from trust. And the deepest clarity of all comes when we learn to trust in divine order. Divine order is the understanding that there is a greater alignment at work, one that goes beyond our spreadsheets, timelines, or best guesses. It means that even when the plan collapses, life is not collapsing. Even when logic fails to explain, purpose is still unfolding. Think about how often we measure life by what makes sense. We think if the path looks straight, it must be right. If the numbers add up, it must be secure. But how many times have you looked back on something that once confused you, something that didn't fit your logic, and realized later it was leading you exactly where you needed to be? That's divine order. Punishment, you couldn't see it in the moment because your vision was too close, too limited. But step by step, it carried you somewhere better than your own plan would have. Trusting divine order brings a calmness that logic can't give. Logic needs proof before it believes. It needs certainty before it moves. But divine order asks you to trust first. It invites you to let go of the need to control every variable and rest in the belief that nothing is wasted. Not the delays, not the disappointments, not even the detours. With that perspective, your energy shifts. Punishment. Instead of panicking when the plan falls apart, you begin to look for the purpose behind the change. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, punishment, what is this shaping in me? That shift in questions alone brings clarity that no spreadsheet ever could. And here's what makes divine order so powerful. It doesn't just guide you, it protects you. Punishment. Sometimes what looks like rejection is really protection. Sometimes what feels like a setback is actually redirection. Our logic can't always see the hidden dangers, but divine order can. Punishment. That's why some doors close right when we wanted them open. That's why some paths turn just when we thought they should go straight. It's not chaos, it's correction. But this kind of trust isn't passive punishment. It doesn't mean you sit back and wait for everything to be handed to you. It means you keep showing up, you keep giving your best, but you release the outcome. You let your effort be your responsibility, and the results rest in something greater. That balance is where peace is found, working hard, but not being crushed by the weight of what if. When you live this way, clarity starts to show up in surprising places. Punishment. You stop overanalyzing every move and start noticing the opportunities right in front of you. You stop stressing over what you can't control and start pouring into what you can. And ironically, when you stop demanding certainty, punishment, life begins to feel more certain because now your security isn't built on a fragile plan. It's anchored in trust. Some of the most restless people are those who depend only on logic. They need every answer before they take a step. Punishment. And they spend their lives paralyzed when life doesn't cooperate. But some of the most peaceful people are those who trust in divine order. They don't have every answer, but they walk with clarity anyway. Punishment. Because clarity doesn't mean knowing the whole path. It means knowing who's guiding the path. So when your logic fails you, when your plans crumble, don't see it as the end. See it as an invitation. An invitation to trust. Punishment, an invitation to release control, an invitation to rest in the belief that there is order even in what feels like disorder, because trusting in divine order doesn't just bring clarity, it brings peace, strength, punishment, and direction in the very moments you thought you were lost. Most of us think setbacks mean we've failed. We see a closed door, a delayed opportunity, or a dream that slips out of reach, and immediately the voice in our head says, punishment, you're not good enough, you messed this up, you'll never recover. That's the natural way we respond because we've been taught to believe progress is always forward, success is always straight, punishment, and anything that slows us down must be wrong. But life doesn't work that way. And when you live aligned with God, you begin to see setbacks through a different lens. They're no longer random punishments or signs that you're unworthy. Punishment. They become tools, lessons. Even in disappointment, there is meaning. Even in delays, there is direction. Alignment with God doesn't remove obstacles. It reshapes how you interpret them. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? You start asking, what can this teach me? Where might this be leading me? That one shift in perspective changes everything. Because now, punishment, the very thing that once felt like a dead end, can become the path to something greater. What once felt like rejection can be seen as protection. And what once felt like wasted time can be recognized as preparation. Punishment, think about the last time you went through a setback that shook you. At the time, it may have felt unbearable, unfair, maybe even meaningless. But look back now, didn't it shape you in ways you couldn't see back then? Punishment. Maybe it taught you patience. Maybe it stripped away something that wasn't serving you. Maybe it redirected you toward an opportunity that fit you better. That's what happens when you're aligned with God. Punishment. Even the valleys aren't wasted. Even the slow seasons are still moving you somewhere. The problem is when we're misaligned, we misinterpret setbacks. We see them as signs to quit. We internalize them as proof we're not enough. Punishment. Measure ourselves against people who seem to be moving faster and assume we're falling behind. But alignment with God steadies you against that noise. It reminds you that your timing is not everyone else's timing. Punishment. It assures you that just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. It may simply mean it's not the right time or not the right door. Punishment. One of the hardest lessons we learn is that not all progress looks like forward motion. Sometimes progress looks like slowing down so you don't burn out. Sometimes it looks like being pulled back like an arrow. Punishment. Only to be launched farther later. Sometimes it looks like being closed off from one path so you can walk down a better one. When you're aligned with God, you stop fearing those seasons. Punishment. Because you know they aren't wasted, they're working. This doesn't mean setbacks suddenly feel easy. Disappointment is still real. Pain is still real, but alignment gives you the strength to carry that pain differently. It gives you perspective. Instead of drowning in, why me? You start leaning into, what's next? Instead of spiraling into frustration, punishment. You start looking for the seed of purpose that might be buried in the very thing you didn't want to happen. That mindset shift alone keeps you moving forward, even in seasons where everything feels stuck. And here's what's powerful, punishment. Alignment with God doesn't just help you endure setbacks, it helps you grow through them. When you see meaning in what you're going through, it builds resilience, it strengthens your patience, it shapes your character. And those are things success can't always teach you. In fact, some of the greatest qualities you'll ever develop are forged in the fires of disappointment. Setbacks, when filtered through alignment, punishment, become preparation for the very things you've been praying for. So the next time you face a delay, a rejection, or a failure, remember this, the meaning isn't always obvious in the moment. Punishment. But just because you can't see it yet doesn't mean it's not there. Trust that alignment is working beneath the surface. Trust that even this season has purpose. Trust that setbacks don't erase direction. They often clarify it. Because when you align with God, you're no longer measuring life only by wins and losses, by speed or delay. You start measuring by growth, by trust, by purpose. And with that mindset, you realize something powerful: nothing is wasted, not even the setbacks, especially not the setbacks.